Hello students, you are welcome to my channel once again. We are going to have a series on flotation. So when we say flotation, what do we mean by that in physics? We are referring to the tendency of an object to rise up to the upper levels in a fluid. When we talk about fluid, as we know, we are referring to either a liquid or gas, right? So when you place, say fluid, we are referring to liquid, the general name for a liquid or gas. So when we place something in a fluid and that object has the ability not to go down but to rise up, then what we mean by it is flotation. The body is floating. So Archimedes, great scientist, came out with one of the laws of flotation. And it is saying that when you have a body and that body is floating in a fluid, then the weight of the floating body is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. What are we trying to say? Assuming we have a, let's see, let me come here. This is a container filled with water. I put a wooden block in here and the wooden block is floating. Let us assume that the weight of this block, okay, is, let's see, 20 newtons. According to the law of flotation, we all know that before we put the object inside, there was some level, right? So after putting the object inside, it will displace some amount of water. So let's say this is the initial level, and after dropping in the block, this is the new level. So let's see, this is what we call this level which came up is what we call the displaced liquid. Okay, so according to the law of flotation, we are saying that the weight of this floating block, which is 20 newtons, should be equal to the weight of the displaced liquid. So it means that the weight of this displaced liquid is also what? 20 newtons. That is what the law is simply trying to tell us. When a body is floating in a fluid, then the weight of the floating body is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. So let us take note of this because we are going to use it a lot in our calculations. All right. Thank you. Now, let's take note of these 4 key facts about a body floating in a liquid. When a body is floating in a liquid, then these 4 key facts are true. The first one is that the weight of the floating body is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. Another one is that part of the body, when the body is floating in a liquid, then part of the body will submerge or sink. And it's true. Okay? When you have a body floating like this, we are saying part will submerge. It is not every part that will get inside. Part will submerge, and there will be part also above the liquid surface. It's also a fact. Then another one is that when a body is floating in a liquid, then the density of the floating body is less or equal to the density of the liquid. Because if the density of the object is not less or equal to the density of the liquid, then it can't float. So anytime an object is floating, it means it is either the density of that floating body is less or equal to the density of that liquid. That is the meaning. So how about if the density of the floating body is equal to the density of the liquid? Point 4 is saying that if the density of the floating body is equal to the density of the liquid, then what will happen is that the object will be fully submerged. What do we mean? And I think we have been seeing this in our everyday life. Sometimes ice, you put ice in water and you realize that the body will be fully submerged. Sometimes you put a plastic container or let's say a plastic bucket in water and you see that sometimes it's fully submerged. So every part will enter the water, fully submerged. You have a very tiny portion showing up on the surface. So these are very important facts we should take note of before we continue from here. So this is our lesson 1 on flotation. Kindly take note of these things because we are going to apply them in our subsequent lesson. So just a quick recap. What is the law of flotation telling us? The law of flotation is saying that when a body is floating in a liquid, the weight of the floating body is equal to the weight of the displaced liquid. So if the weight of the floating body is 5 newtons, then the weight of the displaced liquid will also be 5 newtons. All right? That is the meaning of the law. Then if a body is floating, then these facts are true. These facts hold. The first one is that the weight of the floating body, as we know from the law, is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. Part of the floating body will submerge or sink. Then the density of the floating body is less or equal to the density of the liquid. And finally, we are saying that if the density of the floating body is equal to the density of the liquid, then the body will float. The body floats fully submerged. Thank you very much and hope to see you in our lesson 2. Bye-bye.